You have Trump, who wants to swap land and end the war. You have Zelensky, who wants a 30-day ceasefire and give up no land. You have the European Union that wants to give up no land and get NATO involved back into the conversation again. And then, of course, you have Russia, which wants back to its June 2024 line, the 4 oblasts plus demilitarization and denazification.
President Putin, I believe, wants to see peace, and Zelensky wants to see peace. Now, President Zelensky has to get all of his everything he needs, because he's going to have to get ready to sign something, and I think he is working hard to get that done.
Донеччини, Криму, цю другу спробу поділу України Росії ми не дамо.
I mean, just on the first basis there, you got to say, all right, well, when Trump goes into Alaska with Putin, he already knows that Zelensky is categorically saying, I'm not going to sign any of this stuff. So what we have to realize here, what Zelensky has to realize here, and what the Europeans, as we're going to get to in a minute, have to realize is that there is what the reality is on the ground. You can have your preferences, you can have your strong feelings, you can have your view that you're in the moral right, and maybe you are, but at the bottom line, none of that stuff matters, folks. The only thing that matters is what you can do and what you can't do. And it matters about the balance of power. And right now, the reality, the stark, firm reality on the ground is that Russia is in possession of all those territories, to include the footholds in Sumy and Kharkiv and now Dnipropetrovsk. Those are the realities. Doesn't matter if you like it or not. Doesn't matter if it's immoral or not by your perception. Zero concerns. The only thing that matters is what is real on the ground. And that's what has to be dealt with. And that's what is not being dealt with, at least in Brussels and in Kiev. They're still locked in what they want to be true. And listen, you could really, really want something bad, but if you cannot compel the other side to abandon its positions, and they keep saying, well, it's sanctions. We just need more sanctions. The next sanction is always the one. The next sanction will do it. It never has, and it's not going to. Because Russia, because of all these other sanctions, has made itself almost impervious to Western sanctions, because they have created a situation and an economic system that now no longer relies on the West, and there's minimal inflection points you can bring. There are some, but there are annoyances around the edges because Russia has made themselves where they are no longer susceptible to that. So that's off the table, but we don't accept it. We continue to say, no, I think that we can do that. That's one thing we got to do. Zelensky has continued to say that even the last couple of days. It isn't true, but it's in the fantasy in his mind that he believes it in. And definitely on the ground militarily, you don't have the capacity. All of the support from the West and all the Ukraine forces, they've been trying for 3.5 years, and they have failed for 3.5 years, and especially the last 2. Ever since the end of its failed offensive operation in 2023, it has been nothing but slow, bleeding losses ever since then. And they don't have the capacity remaining in their country, if they mobilize everything, to throw the Russians back. Because the Russians, if you did that, they could mobilize 5 times more. So no matter what happens, you're never going to have the manpower, regardless of the supplies, the money, or anything else, to force Russia back. Therefore, that should lead to any rational understanding that we need to get the best deal we can get right now in Alaska while we still have a chance for negotiations. Because absent negotiations, the only thing that will be left to the Russian side is a conquest. It's just a war of conquest, even if it takes another 2 or 3 years. U.S. intelligence, European intelligence has confirmed or has assessed that Russia could continue to fight not through the next year, but through 2027 at current rates, and continue to expand and to not have any problems. Ukraine might not be able to make it through this year. So everywhere you want to look, the rational position, no matter how much you hold to desires and preferences, says that this is not going to end well for the Ukraine if they don't take this opportunity here. And doesn't look like they're going to. And the European Union is giving Ukraine even more reason to go against Trump when they issued a statement just yesterday, which ironically came after many of them were meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance. Apparently, he was not able to convince them to do anything different. And so they, again, just like Zelensky, they're trying to placate Trump and trying to sound like they're on his team. This is the statement that was released yesterday. We agree that these vital interests, they're talking about the European and Ukraine vital interests, include the need for robust and credible security guarantees that enable Ukraine to effectively defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Ukraine has the freedom of choice over its destiny. Meaningful negotiations can only take place in the context of a ceasefire or reduction of hostilities. The path to peace in Ukraine cannot be decided without Ukraine. We remain committed to the principle that international borders must not be changed by force. The current line of contact should be the starting point for negotiations. We reiterate that Russia's unprovoked and illegal invasion of Ukraine is a flagrant violation of the UN Charter, the Helsinki Final Act, the Budapest Memorandum, and successive Russian commitments. We underline our unwavering commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrities. They are categorically opposed. Everything that they talked about in that very long list are things that they would like to see happen, but they don't have the wherewithal to make it happen. There is no path that Ukraine and the Europe and the West at large can compel Russia to adopt any of those situations, any of those declarations there. And just look at it. I mean, the first one is the biggest no-go of all. They say they want security guarantees, which in subsequent conversations also from Europe over the weekend that included J.D. Vance, they said they still want an open door for NATO. That is by itself, if nothing else was on the paper, is rejected by the Russians as being the reason why we went to war in the first place, and we're not going to back off of that. So I don't know why anyone at this point would even be talking about NATO. And why would NATO want Ukraine inside of its alliance when it would be putting them into conflict with Russia? Well, then you get an Article 5 possibility of nuclear war. It's insane. It is irrational. It is just off the table crazy, and yet that's just where we are. They continue to hit several times on the territorial integrity, meaning they don't want to swap anything. So again, they're in direct contradiction with President Trump. We're not going to swap anything. We want everything back. And this harkens back to the 1991 borders. Now, they said in that statement that the negotiations will start at the current line of contact. And then, of course, in their mind, because of territorial integrity, we'll go back to what they were prior to the war starting. And it's never going to happen. And there's no way that they can compel that to happen. And then this weird part here that Ukraine has freedom of choice. No, they don't. They don't have freedom of choice. It's a fantasy. They are, first of all, tremendously dependent upon Europe itself. They can do nothing. They can't even exist without the help from Europe and the United States. So they're not a free actor here at all. And they also certainly, even less, have any freedom of ability and freedom of choice in terms of the war in Russia. They are constrained and they are compelled to defensive positions by the stronger Russian side. So one has to wonder, where is this going? You have Trump, who wants to swap land and end the war. You have Zelensky, who wants a 30-day ceasefire and give up no land. You have the European Union that wants to give up no land and get NATO involved back into the conversation again. And then, of course, you have Russia, which wants back to its June 2024 line, the 4 oblasts, plus demilitarization and denazification. That hasn't even been talked about here. Obviously, no one in the West is even going to contemplate those. But that, unless there's a radical shift on the Russian side, those are still requirements for the Russians. And as we've been showing you here just yesterday, there's a lot of Russians, and I've had some other conversations subsequent to that. There's a lot of angry Russians, and even the contemplation that Putin would consider giving in on any of these points, because they see on the ground that they have the balance of powers in their favor, and that they can continue to roll, whether fast or slow, until they get everything that they feel that they need for their security on their terms.